It was not the first case, and probably is not going to be the last case, but it was a wake-up call in the Silicon Valley about the importance of the due diligence process. Have you heard of a company called Theranos? It was a startup company that claimed that it can do reliable blood testing with only one drop of blood. And it turns out that the claims of the founders and the technology was not actually working. It was a good case of how VCs could fail doing the proper due diligence and letting the founders get away with some false claims about their technology. It was not the first case, and probably is not going to be the last case, but it was a wake-up call in the Silicon Valley about the importance of the due diligence process for both the investors and the founders. So I'm going to dig into that process, and I'm going to discuss what is the due diligence process. Why is it really important for you as an entrepreneur to be ready for any due diligence anytime by your investors? And finally, I'm going to discuss in depth what investors are really looking for when it comes to the due diligence, and some final remarks that would make you always ready and make the process hopefully less stressful for you. So let's dive in. So what is the due diligence? Due diligence is a process that usually VCs initiate to check the state of your business. They look after the legal affairs of your business, the financials, the IP, the founders, etc. And I'm going to talk more about that in depth. But this is a trust building moment between the entrepreneurs and the VCs. At that particular stage, as an entrepreneur, you must be 100% transparent about everything taking place in your company. And actually, I share a story with you about that. One of the companies that I was working with, they got a great interest from a VC and they started the due diligence process. Everything at the beginning was relatively smooth until the VC realized that there is some sort of a legal dispute between the founder and one of the previous founders who left the company. And as a result of that, this destroyed the trust between the VC and the entrepreneurs, and the VCs ended up walking away from the company. The problem was not in the legal dispute itself. The problem was that the entrepreneur did not reveal that fact at the beginning of the process. They wasted the time of the VCs and of course the lawyers throughout that whole process until it got revealed towards the end. And that's really bad. The problem is not being transparent at the beginning of the process, even if you have to deliver some bad news. So the common wisdom here or advice is to be ready for your due diligence anytime. But why is that? Why is that important? Number one, moving fast with VCs is really key to closing big investment rounds. To get VCs on your side, you somehow need to create the FOMO effects or the fear of missing out. If you're not ready to do the due diligence process and you prolong that process with them because you're still missing some paperwork, VCs may lose their excitement and may just walk away as a result of just moving slow. And second, you want to make sure that you're not accumulating any kind of legal debt, like paperwork that you should have done at the beginning, like clarifying some of your IP if you're outsourcing to some of the other companies. And third, it's a good thing to do anyways. Making sure that you're on top of your legal and financial and any kind of logistics for your business is a good practice. It shows everyone that you're on top of your business. You care about all the details that might impact your business, and you are always keen to have your paperwork in order. And that builds a trust over time, internally and of course with the VCs. So now let's talk about what VCs are typically looking for when it comes to an early stage startup due diligence. And by the way, I included a link down in the description of this video that has everything about the due diligence. It lists everything that typically a VC would looking for. But there are four main areas that VCs usually look for in early stage companies. The first one is people, and it talks about the founders. The second is the product and your IP in general. The third one is your financials, and finally the legal. So when it comes to the people due diligence, VCs are looking for 2 to 3 factors. Number one, does the founding team has enough experience? And they do some background check about your jobs that you had before and the technologies that you work with, or maybe your business achievements. And second, they look for everyone's commitment. Are you all full-time on this, or some of them are still part-time and they're not planning to join anytime soon? And they sometimes make some reference calls. They call others who knew you or worked with you for an extended time to ask a bit more about you. Now, when it comes to the product due diligence, VCs usually have a CTO or a trusted advisor that they can rely on to check your product and your IP. And they go after a few points there. Number one, they take a look at the product. They want to see a demo or probably try it themselves. And second, they take a look at your product roadmap. Do you have a reasonable roadmap? Is it something that you can execute on or not? And third, they check on your IP. Do you have really deep and defendable IP in your product or not? If it's a shallow IP, that may trigger a red flag with them. And finally, they check if you are depending on any third parties that might cause any IP or legal issues in the future. Now, the financial due diligence is a key indicator of your transparency and sound business practices. Investors in this area are looking for two things. Number one, are you disciplined in your spending? Are you documenting everything properly or not? And second, do you value the money that you're getting? Are you spending the money on what is really necessary for business at that stage, or you're just spending on tangential items? So they look for two things in that area. Number one, your cash flow and everything around it, how you're spending and whether you are spending in a proper way or not. And second, they look at the unit economics of your company. Is your company having a good path, or at least is it possible for the company to become profitable the way it works right now, or based on the business model that you presented to them or not? Now, finally, when it comes to legal due diligence, it's mostly mechanical and it mainly falls on your lawyer. If you have a good lawyer, your paperwork should be in order. But the VCs at this stage, or for that specific area, they look for a few items. Do you have the proper incorporation of the company or not? Do you have the right founders agreement, IP assignment, and other documents that guarantee the IP of the company and the good legal status of the company in general? But sometimes there are corner cases that may require special attention from you. And I'll give you a story from my own experience. We were outsourcing some of the core product areas to another company, and we did not have the proper IP assignment agreement between us and them. And we almost lost an agreement because of that. We missed having this agreement, and our lawyer was not really aware of that activity happening in the background. So we had to scramble around and got an agreement, and we finally got everything in order. But that could be a source of a big problem for us if the other company decided to keep the IP for themselves. So it's important to have a regular review with your lawyers and make sure that your legal standing is in a good shape, rather than waiting for the last moment when you get the funding or the due diligence process. Now, let me leave you with a few key tips for the due diligence process. Number one, be honest and transparent with everyone, even when it comes to delivering bad news. And second, be respectful of everyone's time. If you see the due diligence process may cause one VC to say no, say this at the beginning. You never know. But honesty and being respectful of everyone's time goes miles. And second, be consistent. Make sure that your document done in a consistent way. Do not deal with some founders or some employees different from others. And fourth, make sure that you own the process as an entrepreneur and a founder. It's your own responsibility to keep everything in order. And finally, and this is a common mistake, I see entrepreneurs, they own the process, but they also do everything themselves. This is not required to do an effective due diligence process. Delegate to others. Hire maybe a part-time CFO who can take care of your financials. Make sure that your legal counsel takes care of everything legal. Include your engineering team when it comes to the product, due diligence, and demoing the product and showing the roadmap, etc. You're the orchestrator of that whole process, and you own it, of course, but you do not need to do everything yourself.